So one of the things we did well, Rabio, was our experimentation phases, our rapid prototyping phases. We were usually able to fail fast, and our day would sort of go like this. So when we were ideating, it would sort of be something like, in the morning, the team is together by the whiteboard, and a lot of times we're all in office, and I think that in office energy sort of helps. And it would be in the morning, we'd be ideating at the whiteboard, and we'd be like, oh my god, this is a brilliant idea. We have a brilliant idea in the morning on the whiteboard. And then oftentimes what would happen is, by the afternoon, it's, wow, this is so stupid. This is a very stupid idea. And a lot of times what teams focus on is that A, your ideation phase, or B, lamenting on that failure phase. But what's actually important is the distance between the two. It's how quickly did we move from A, brilliant idea, to B, stupid idea. And what high performing teams do well is incrementally reduce the distance between A and B. And that's something that we worked hard on and we got very good at. And this is one of the differentiators between teams that are going to be high performing and teams that are going to be performing sort of around the mean, is the distance between ideation and failure. And the teams that are high performing are reducing that distance incrementally. And we did that. We did really well. And this is one of the things that I don't think a lot of teams focus on, because they get lost in the ideation part and then they lament the failure, and maybe they don't have room to fail. Maybe there's a cultural problem. Maybe the team isn't transparent, where failing is not something that's people are okay with. So in our case, failure was part of the job. And I would always consider, if we weren't failing, then we're not taking enough risks. If every idea we come up with works, we're simply not shooting enough shots. We need more ideas. And that's where you need that quick fail. You need that distance to shrink, and you need over time to get really good at shrinking that distance, because the more ideas that you can come up with and the quicker you can fail, the quicker you can find those prototypes. And then it's a matter of the next phase.
Yeah, I believe at the beginning, as simple as it is, just agreeing on the setting, or where do you want innovation kind of happen. And honestly, I think it's reflected only not on innovation or innovation teams specifically, but any kind of team. Like um, I always ask people, especially like new managers, it's like, what do you do at the beginning of the day? Once you see your team, what do you do? So most people, like, I'll ask them on their progress. I'll see where they at on their tasks, blah blah blah. Some people throw some agile methodology in my face. Not it's wrong, but what I wanted from the answer is, well, I'll go have coffee. I'll walk with some of the guys, do like one-on-ones, grabbing a coffee, an espresso shot, whatever. That's what I wanted from them. So that's where, like, to go back to your point, is like the setting is important. So I think what worked for us best is that everybody agreed that the best setting is at the office, where we are a walking distance from a nice cafe. We're just ideating, throwing ideas right and left, and everybody was happy with that. It's not like that we weren't satisfied with like a remote creative board on Miro or whatever, but that wasn't the style that everybody agreed on. Everybody was happy that it's a setting inside an office. So yeah, if you find the environment where ideation starts and you throw ideas right and left and you get excited to start prototyping it in your head and you draw it on a board, and you find somehow end of day, which happened a lot, end of day, that this is not going to work, or see you tomorrow guys because we need to tweak this. I think the power comes from all these people that can, I'm going to repeat myself, but prototyping things inside their heads, because everybody understands the vision of where a feature or an idea is going, and everybody tries to get everybody on the same level. And I believe one of the biggest values of successful innovative teams is the honesty. And when I mean honesty, is that if I'm not at the speed that the team is on, I'm just going to raise my hand and say, like, hey guys, catch me up, because I'm not keeping up. And that transparency, that honesty, actually helps even in learning from each other. So the experience in general of experimentation in any enterprise is just it's a great experience by itself. Other than like getting to the idea, drawing it on a wall, and then prototyping and getting it to get some kind of user adoption or being sold to the business before getting user adoption, I think the initial experience is pretty awesome.
And a high performing team should be operating transparently where there is no stupid questions. So if you're on a team where you're afraid to say something that you don't understand, you're not on a high performing team, most likely. And if you are on a high performing team and it's not so transparent, imagine how much more high performing it might be if it was transparent. So there's no stupid questions. And that distance between the ideation phase and the failure phase, that's something that was measured. So, and that's something that we would focus on, is how quickly can we fail. So it's essentially is how quickly can we refute our hypothesis. That's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to do the science over. We're trying to actually refute ourselves. And then most of the time you are refuting yourself, and you have to be comfortable with this. And it's a different way to think. You're not trying to prove your idea right. You're trying to actually prove it wrong. And then the ones that would hold up, the ones that would hold water, that's your B prime. So your A is your ideation phase, your B is your failure phase, and then your B prime is, okay, something slipped through. It seems to be holding up under intense scrutiny and a lot of tension and in some type of a relatively deep analysis. And that's when you move to that next phase. But one of the concrete ways that we were able to shrink the distance between A and B, ideation to failure, was a lot of it has to do with your technology, your architecture, and what you have in place. In our case, in the case of generative AI experimentation, the data fabric is a big reason why we're able to move so quick, because each idea could immediately be spun up, because we don't have to spend time doing the engineering on every iteration. We don't have to glue together our disparate data sources or create ETLs. We can immediately access the data fabric and start the experimentation. And then the second part is, what we're looking for isn't what's our technology or our application or what's our architecture or what's our tool or what's our vendor. What we're looking for is, can we produce a single desirable output? So an idea emerges in the morning. Can we produce a single desirable output from that idea? And that's the first step. And oftentimes you can't. Oftentimes you can't squeeze anything through that appears useful to the enterprise. But the times you do squeeze something that's desirable to the enterprise, the question then is, okay, I got one desirable output out of 10, let's say. Can I begin to shape the distribution to get 2 out of 10 and 3 out of 10? And then the question becomes, how many out of 10 do I need to get to for this to become useful to the enterprise as a product? And then that's your second phase. Once you get past your B phase, once you go from ideation, it goes through the gauntlet and you get to B prime. Okay, we do have some desirable output here. Then it's, okay, how do we turn this single observation into a prototype? And then that's the second phase. Most of the time you're failing before that phase. You should be failing before that phase. If you seem to be running too many prototypes too often, you're probably not there's not enough tension in your A to B phase. And that comes down to your high performing teams and the transparency. If there's not enough people to raise their hand and say, this is stupid, you're probably going to be chasing your tail and going in different directions than you should be. And that requires trust and transparency and a team that's close. And for us,
100%, yeah.
office worked, but it's in office doesn't necessarily have to be the case. You can do this remotely, but for us, it seemed to be, when we were all together in the office, it seemed things seemed to really connect.
Yeah, it's the energy overall, and as you said, the transparency part of it. Like, you don't want the innovation team leader, etc., to be have the ego to refuse to for someone to tell him like that this is a bad idea, or to tell her that's not a good idea. And at the same time, the whole team needs to be accepting the fact that sometimes it's just, with all honesty, it's not an idea that is worth tackling right now. It could be a good one, but from experimentation phase, it's not worth it. And we had these examples where, like, some of the team members, they had great ideas. It's just, from, because you're looking at it as a leader, you're looking at it from, I want my leadership and executives to sign off on it. I want to have the time, and I want to see some kind of user adoption, so it's how it benefits my enterprise and my customers. So you're looking at all of these things, and you have to answer to your team member depending on that, and say, is that worth it, even if it's the greatest idea ever?
Mm-hmm.
And that becomes, naturally, with high performing teams, um, some kind of a management system for innovation, right? Where everybody understands where it's coming from, and the team members at some point, they will understand where you come from and start, like, calculating this into their head before even spitting out any kind of idea on or how to move forward.
Correct.
So,
Correct. A high
and
performing team can't operate from a hierarchy, like you were saying about the ideation. Best idea wins. Doesn't matter where it comes from. It could be the intern that just started 3 weeks ago. If that's the best idea, then that's the idea that you're running with, and you're giving them credit for it. So the hierarchy on a high performing team doesn't exist. There is a hierarchy because you need some type of direction and there needs to be leadership. But when you're talking of actually producing something useful for the enterprise, and you're talking about experimentation, there is no hierarchy. Best idea wins, and you need to be capable of quickly understanding what might be the best idea, and that cannot have any political contamination or hierarchy or ego or hubris in that decision. It needs to be objective. And high performing teams that operate with trust have no problem doing this. And this is why there's a difference between the teams that are delivering at a high level or high impact versus the ones that might be sort of struggling. A lot of it has to do with this dynamic.
yeah, and as what you brought up is really good, because that fail fast mentality, I know it's a term that is repeated a lot, but I think a lot of people miss the point. It's not fail fast on implementation, it's a fail fast in the whole innovation process. Whatever it fails, it fails. Whatever, like, if you just spit out the idea and it failed, if you just talk details and it failed, if it was communicated to the whole team and it was refused for whatever reason, just like we mentioned, the all the components that come in to actually say this is the idea that we're tackling: scope, budget, drawing on the wall, architecture, prototyping. So it's all these phases that could fail. And this is just like a point to clarify, because I feel people think that any idea is successful till implementation. And then implementation is the one that has a question mark on it, which is not the truth.
Correct. And that's where the waste comes in for an enterprise. The waste isn't in going from A to B and failing on an ideation and we can't find any desirable output. And okay, let's try again. And maybe we go 3 or 4 spins and we can't seem to produce any desirable output. That's not where you waste. That's not where the waste comes in. The waste comes in when you incorrectly determine something desirable to the enterprise and move to the implementation phase. And now you're bringing in all of the resources. So now you're bringing in your software engineers and your security teams and your architects, all for nothing. All for the reason that you missed in your A to B phase, you missed in that failing phase. You failed to refute yourself. You failed to refute yourself. And that's why you need to think of it as, we're not trying to confirm our idea, we're trying to refute it. And that's a different way to think about it, and that will help move to that implementation phase that you mentioned. Only the ideas that are actually desirable to the business, and not just producing a single desirable output, but getting to that phase where the threshold is, okay, we're producing enough desirable outputs from this distribution where this product would be useful to the business. And then it becomes the different phases now. Okay, what's not desirable? Let's say 7 out of 10, we're able to produce 7 out of 10 desirable outputs for the business. And we determine that with subject matter experts or domain knowledge experts in the business to say, okay, this is probably enough to be useful. The next question is, well, what about the 3 that is not useful? Are they actually destructive? And that's where you get into your type 1 and your type 2 error analysis. And that's the whole other half of the game, is that, okay, we are producing things that are desirable, but the things that aren't, how destructive are they? Can we live with them? And that gets down to your precision and your recall balance of your type 1 and your type 2 errors. And that's where you need the subject matter experts to come in and who understand how this output's going to affect their processes to help you shape those errors. And that's another part that a lot of failure happens, is that you don't really understand how damaging your errors are to the process, and you might move too quickly into production. And yes, when it's good, it's great, but when it's not, it undermines everything preceding it. And that's the second half of the ball game, and that part of the game cannot be accomplished without strong business leadership working with you.
Yeah, it's I look at it as that a vision from top leadership to actually drive innovation is important, because that's how you connect any kind of experimentation that you do or your team does to that vision. So we always give the example of like the extreme ones, like Kennedy and going to the moon in 10 years. If you look at it as technically wasn't feasible by that time, and um, definitely there was desire from people to see this happening, but the idea was that there was a race to go to the moon, and there has to be a vision set so people can strive to it. So that vision drove a lot of innovation in the teams that were working on it, even with being the feasibility wasn't there. Now, building the team around this vision, you need to find the people that are at least at the beginning self-managing, the high performing ones that you were talking about, which is, I'm here to build cool things that I can see my customers benefit from or my users benefit from. And then I'm going to see ROI appearing after that user adoption, or is that after that customer experience that got improved. Now, building this team, I think I'm not going to say it's the easiest thing. It's not easy to find those high performing people that are willing to innovate and experiment and go to the next level. But I think it's much easier than making innovation part of your system or an arm into your enterprise. That's another challenge by itself, because you don't want innovation to be once and that's it, or we're waiting for other competitors to do it for us to do it, because that's not innovation anymore. We're just copying someone else. And we're not saying you need to invent something new. We're just saying that you have to keep this as a practice inside your enterprise. So you always trying new things and trying to make better for your customer experience and what gets you to the ROI that you're looking at the end. So it's two different things. High performing teams are going to always help you out build that innovation arm from the beginning, but then they will slowly, hopefully, in smart enterprises, that process starts to get built around it. They are self-managing, but they're going to start building a process around it because they want other people. Believe it or not, those high-performing team members, they're really good at actually involving other people and working cross-functionally. That's where success comes in. So because they work cross-functionally, they're going to attract more people to this kind of environment and mentality of innovation, right? So they're going to start to build a process by themselves. And what I'm hoping from all enterprises, that don't put process before innovation. Let innovation happens and let the process be built around it, whatever fits. And once you see that happen, now the innovation is going to expand slowly, because you can see other companies, not other companies, other departments, other teams are going to see that, okay, so we have an arm that we can expand on and actually throw ideas at, and I can be part of it because I know that there is a process in place that gets me involved. So now you have innovation growing slowly inside your enterprise. I digressed a little bit, but the idea is like from experimentation, from a small team, from achieving goals that match up back to the vision of your company. Now, how do you make this something continuous?
Right. It's exactly the point, that it shouldn't be isolated. Innovation shouldn't be in isolation, a one off, that let's try innovation. The innovation lab isn't something off to the side. The enterprise is the lab, meaning it should bleed into the culture at every layer, top to bottom, where everybody is ideating. And generative AI unlocks this ability because everybody will be interacting with transformers and everybody will have ideas. And it's important then to capture all of the ideas top to bottom in the enterprise, in which case innovation reshapes your culture and your innovation lab isn't off to the side. Your enterprise is the lab.
I agree. It's AI, especially like large language models, introduced this, especially with ChatGPT, Gemini. It just introduced this tool for everybody, and it was interesting to see how curious most people are and see how this tool can improve their productivity. And it started generating a lot of ideas because most people, I should actually look for the saying. I keep repeating it, but in other words, most people are going good at adding to an idea more than generating an idea originally. And I think large language models solved for that problem, where you we might have the god talent or the process in our heads to generate new things. Some people don't, but that doesn't mean they're not creative. It's just they're better at adding to things or editing things.
Right,
It's like DJs. And
right, right. But you need
so
that. You need that.
yeah.
Innovation is sometimes that large gaps that you're crossing with some unique ideation, but oftentimes it's incremental. It's incrementally improving on things that accumulates to crossing some large threshold. So you need all that. You need incremental shifts. And then sometimes it's far less likely to have those big ideas, but they exist, and you want to create your enterprise in a way and design it in a way and have a culture that allows the highest probability for those big ideas to drop. So, and the way to do that is to consider your enterprise not as an enterprise that has an innovation lab, but your enterprise is the lab. Everybody is an innovator. They call it that. What's that word for it? I don't think it's strong enough. The intrapreneur word.
Yeah, entrepreneur.
I think that's not strong enough of a word. I think it's confusing. But the point is, it's making a similar point though. It's making a similar point that everybody is an innovator. Everybody is a potential inventor. Innovation isn't a side thing. Innovation is the thing. Your enterprise is the lab. I think, and that's a culture shift. Most enterprises, that's an entirely different way of thinking. And then when you include to that, there's no hierarchy in ideation. It doesn't matter where the idea comes from. Remove your ego, remove your hubris, remove all that nonsense. Best idea wins. And if you have a transparent team and a team that trusts one another, that's never a problem. The problem is when you don't have those things, and then it becomes an ego game and a hubris game, and political
Yeah.
contamination enters into the picture, and then best idea doesn't win, best idea goes away, worse ideas emerge, and we're wasting money. We're just wasting money for years, dithering and not and worse, not even realizing we're wasting money. Not even realizing we're wasting money. That's worse. That's worse.
Yeah, it's for large language models. Other than the idea of building on an experiment or an idea and generating those and looking how to optimize it or getting it better, just like as an every unit inside your enterprise. I think one of the things is just like fact checking yourself and get speedy feedback that you would have waited for Rabia or Fatini to answer your question about a certain technological solution. Or so it gives you this like whole advantage, and you just need, as we were mentioning before, how do you put an innovation system in place where people can understand how they can promote one idea to be something to say, hey, I think I have one of the good ones, and you guys should take a look at it. So large language models like made a huge shortcut for people to actually get to this like small success of like I have a really good idea in my own little corner of the enterprise that I can improve things. And it doesn't, as you mentioned, it doesn't need to be the biggest change ever. If you change your own unit, your own department, and improve it, it's a huge win for the whole enterprise. But again, what people struggle with is I don't know where to go with my ideas. And with large language models, I think that not enforces, but suggests on enterprises that you need this innovation system in place. You need that innovation arm because this technology just solved a lot of your problems of your people speaking up with their ideas. So how can you turn this into a system where you can hear it all and just pick the best? As you said, the best idea wins in this case. For the entrepreneur, just like to comment on it. I kind of like it. I know like you don't like it a lot, but I kind of like it because entrepreneur is supposed to be, to me, like the internal entrepreneur that does like face all the struggles of innovation inside the enterprise. Because again, like all enterprises are notorious for like innovation is a second thought. And let's just not generalize, but most of them. So an entrepreneur just comes in and just like faces all the struggles to get an innovation system in place and shows people that experimentation is important. It has, I think the naming is perfect. Like if that's your situation, but at
Right.
some point,
The direction is the correct direction, and the point is the correct
yeah,
point. I'm not
yeah,
a not a super fan of the word. However, it is clever.
yeah.
It's a clever word. Sometimes these words, these keywords, just become slogans. So in other words, if your enterprise is just sloganeering, that's another wasteful thing. If you're just producing slogans for the purpose of appeasing the culture, or producing sort of a false narrative that we're entrepreneurs or we're innovators, and none of this is even true, I think it hurts. I think you need to really just roll up your sleeves and show some teeth and do it. Um,
I
but
think it's,
the direction
but
is correct, though. What they're trying to do is correct. It's just,
yeah, nothing. I feel like a slogan is needed. Like if you have the vision and you want some like fancy
yeah,
words, short words to describe it. But here's my problem with that. My problem is the idea of a slogan is to be communicated, to be catchy and communicated. And I think most enterprises stop there. Like the company has a vision, slogan it as much as you want. But now how does it trickle down to your little guy inside the enterprise? I think this is where that fails. It's like because now you're hearing the slogan, you don't hear the vision behind the slogan because most of now we're jumping away a little bit from innovation, but it's I think it's an important subject, which is people always say like, oh, it's like there is a slogan, yes, but I think it's middle management that as it trickles down, the slogan trickles down with the vision starts disappearing. What's left is a slogan because it's the easiest to memorize, and most of these managers, I'm not going to say they don't care, but most probably they don't understand the vision. They're just here for the day to day. So now, once you get to the little guy, poor guy, it was like, well, the slogan of our company is one, two, three. I was like, okay, that's not how you explain it. So I think I'm gonna blame leadership for this because I think it's one of the standards that should be you explain the vision, and if you don't understand it, I'm gonna help you understand it so you can communicate it really well. And I think that's
right,
what most enterprises fail at.
right, and exactly. So yeah, there's nothing. Yeah, exactly. There's nothing structurally wrong with the slogan. It's a good idea. It's the right approach. Like the definition of what it is correct. The correct
No, I'm
approach.
agreeing with you on the sloganeering, like because again, it's how it moves through your
Yeah,
enterprise.
it moves. It gets diluted. It dilutes. It's because there's no meaning after it shifts downstream after a couple layers. It's more. It becomes like a meaningless thing, and that's when it's just sloganeering. Like the vision is sort of diluted into just a slogan, and we're just saying this thing, and we're repeating it, and no one means it, and certainly no one's acting on it. The best way to put the teeth to the slogan is the leaders to live it. Leaders ideate and fail. Show that
100.
show that you can ideate and fail. Show that you can take someone's idea, give them credit for it, quickly test it, and maybe you fail, maybe you don't. But the best way to turn it from a vision, or the best way to take it from a slogan to a vision, is to live it as a leader. Be the leader that's living that idea of whatever entrepreneur. And that's hard for a lot of leaders to do because, like you said, they're just trying to survive the day. The idea is like, I'm just trying to survive the day, or maybe I'm just trying to survive the week, or maybe I'm just trying to survive the month. And if that's the case, where especially if you're in sort of more of an executive layer position, if you're sort of director level, or higher, and your mindset is, I'm trying to survive the day, I'm trying to survive the week, there's a problem somewhere here, either in that leader's ability to shape the future, or the enterprise's priorities, or maybe way people are hired, or whatever. But that to me is a problem. And then you're going to end up with just slogans. If you have your leaders just trying to survive the day, forget about any innovation or any big paradigm shifts or any big disruptive moves or anything like that. It's just never going to get off the ground. So that to me is something that enterprises should look at the executive layers. Like, are your leaders just trying to survive the day? And if it's the case that that's true, they're all just overworked and overstressed and they're just trying to get through the day, then how are you ever going to innovate anything and
Yeah.
disrupt in any possible way if
See,
that's the case?
see, yeah, I guess like the piece that sometimes I agree with, sometimes I disagree, which is to the answer to questions like how do you make innovation available or the space available for people to innovate? And I know we have really good examples out there, like of companies that did let's give them 10-15% of their time and let's see what they do. And I think with high performing team members that we're talking about, this actually works. Like the cool story of them in the 60s, I guess, like when they invented, well, they didn't invent it in the 60s. They invented some kind of adhesive that was used in the post-its and it was like commercialized in the 80s. But the funny part about it I want to mention is that this guy, the inventor, who had 10-15% availability of his time to make a strong adhesive, he made a mistake. He found an adhesive that can be used for post-its, and he was actually promoting it for like, I don't know, 10 years inside the company as the solution that doesn't have a problem. So I found that funny. Is that it's like he actually invented something. And I think, as cool as it sounds, I don't think that's what's asked from people in enterprise right now. As you mentioned before, incremental improvements, finding a way to improve your customer experience, finding a way to increase your team's productivity is innovative. Inventing is a totally different story. That is such a cool concept, but not everybody's capable of, unfortunately, not me. So
Well, I think everybody is capable, absolutely, of inventing. And I think people have invented things and didn't realize they invented them. Also, I think people have come up with ideas and they might not, and that's the whole point of having the right environment. The right environment will capture those inventions. The right, because people aren't afraid to say something stupid. You're never going to invent anything unless you're willing to sound stupid many, many times.
I agree.
There's just no possible way because an invention is something that doesn't
Doesn't
exist.
exist.
So
Yeah.
if you're coming up with ideas of things that don't exist, when you're standing on the shoulders of giants, and then you want to say, you know what, I'm going to get off the shoulders and come up with some other thing, you're most of the time going to sound stupid. But that one time that you don't can be revolutionary, even if it's revolutionary in the context of a local business or the world. So that's why that environment is so important to be in an environment of trust and transparency where people can say stupid things and it's okay. This is how we're going to get to that breakthrough is that it's going to be a repetition of things that don't work over time. We need to get from A to B very quickly, from ideation to failure very quickly. We're trying to not confirm our bias, but we're actually trying to refute ourselves. That way we can avoid moving into the next phase in the wrong direction. And we need people to be 100% comfortable with saying things that don't make sense. That's the only type of environment that's going to lead to some type. Not the only type. I shouldn't say that's the only type, but that's certainly going to increase the probability of extracting those innovative and inventive ideas. And then over time, if that becomes the culture of the entire enterprise, now you're really increasing your probability of paradigm shifting in some way, and you never know where the good idea is going to come from. Like we have, like anecdotally, we have so many times where I've been introduced to great ideas from people that I would never have expected to have the great ideas. One example is we were working on some type of a model related to churn for a department, and it was the machine learning engineers were sort of whiteboarding it to different features, or what should we measure, what matters, and we were sort of in isolation. And then someone from that department came over. We were whiteboarding and they were talking with us and we explained what we were doing. And immediately, instantly, she found something in terms of a feature or something that we should be considering that none of us considered. None of us considered. So she wasn't an engineer, wasn't a data scientist, but she was a domain knowledge expert. She walks over and she's like, "Oh, how come you didn't do A and B? This is probably," and boom, it sort of glued it all together conceptually, and that made the difference. That made the
Found the
difference.
missing piece.
Exactly. So that's somebody that probably doesn't consider themselves an inventor or an innovator, that just innovated with us. That and that's the type of culture that you want. You want that type of cross-functional, constant ideation where no one's afraid to say something that doesn't make sense, and then you will see the benefits. The impact will start to surface from this type of culture.
Yeah. And I know that enterprises look at it as that, okay, I get your point, Rabia. I need it as a system. I need it as an arm inside my enterprise. Let's put it in place. And I get that it could be looked at as a system that could be put in place. But I think part of the attractiveness of innovation is a little bit of freedom, even in an enterprise. I'm not saying go rogue. I'm just saying part of the attractiveness to someone that wants to present a new idea and work on it for your enterprise and so you can get the benefit is that you give some kind of freedom. Now it's the freedom of thought, freedom of how to introduce this idea to the systems that you have or to your enterprise. So I think, and this is like a personal opinion, is like I know everybody wants it in their enterprises and they know it's not the easiest system to integrate. And but at the same time, part of it again, it's that feeling of freedom from the
Mm-hmm.
people that innovate inside
And
enterprises.
let's take that a step further. So what I would ask you is, think about the intangibles, or maybe the ripple effect of this type of culture. So what would you say this type of culture has on morale throughout the department or the enterprise, and turnover? And we know that these things are costly. Low morale leads
It's
to low performance and higher churn. All of these things are very costly to the company. So not only are you not innovating new ideas, but you're also increasing the cost to
losing people.
maintain your payroll because of the turnover and the lower performance. So what would you say those ripple effects are?
Of innovation, it's definitely positive. It's going to take them down for sure. Because the idea is like people sometimes stay in enterprises just because they like the culture of innovation. They like that they can build stuff. And we saw that firsthand.
Hmm.
People that are very highly skilled, but it's like, I'm not going anywhere because I can see that I can try stuff. I can see the needle moving because of something I changed. So they feel a sense of ownership.
And it's not just giving them the freedom to say, okay, just to appease them. There's a value back to the enterprise in morale increasing in general, where your morale
I
level
agree.
increases, your general performance increases, and your turnover reduces. Turnover is very costly to a company when you're losing key people or domain knowledge experts and engineers, and then you have gaps, and then you have other people spending their time to try to close the gap, and then you need to figure out, do we rehire, and then you're rehiring somebody that you need to sort of retrain. There's a big cost to all of that. So that freedom that you're talking about isn't just to appease the engineers, it's actually an investment in your department's performance and cost reduction.
For Robbie Innovations.